Hello.
Welcome back to the second session of the California Water Board's 6th Annual Water Data Science Symposium. I hope you all had a good lunch. I am Toni Marshall with the Office of Information Management and Analysis. I'll be hosting this session for the next couple hours. This morning, the first session focused on data to insight, where data is collected and then visualized. This session is titled Insight to Action, where tools and techniques are used to support data-driven decision-making by water managers. These decisions then feed into actions that affect the ecology, organisms, and communities of water consumers. It's where the rubber meets the road, essentially. It's what data or collecting the data is all about. We have 6 great presentations for you in this session. Our first presentation is titled Unnatural Water Balance and Biological Beneficial Uses, a Data-Driven Framework to Support Flow Management and Decisions. Amanda Aprahamian with Orange County Public Works is our speaker for this presentation. And Amanda, you're welcome to take it away.
Thank you so much, Toni. Hi and welcome. My name is Amanda Aprahamian. I'll be talking to you about the South Orange County Stormwater Program's data-driven framework that supports our stormwater flow management decisions, specifically regarding unnatural water balance in our watershed management area. So I'll walk you through the issues that we face and how we use a data-driven framework as our solution. So when asking the question, what do we do about unnatural water balance? We have a few issues. There are a lot of overlapping considerations, limited abilities and choices, and many unanswered questions. Our solution really just tweaks our issues into actionable steps we can take that feed into gathering data through monitoring, assessment, and research. So we're going to consider our overlapping considerations, assess our abilities and choices, ask answerable questions, get to that gathered data step, and then get some insight and action from that. This presentation will go step by step to show you this in action. And you'll see that steps 1 through 3 are crucial for a data-driven approach to give you insight that's comprehensive and relevant and action steps that you can actually take. So when asking ourselves, what do we do about unnatural water balance? We know that it can lead to unnatural flow regime, and that can lead to changes and even impairments in biology and ecology in our streams. Unnatural water balance is basically more or less water in our streams than there would be without urbanization. Similarly, unnatural stream flow regime is that our stream reaches are more wet or dry than they would be without urbanization. So as we make decisions for watershed management, we want to keep in mind that relationship between biological integrity and the unnatural flow magnitude, timing, and duration and frequency. Another consideration is that the local MS4 permit prohibits many sources of dry weather runoff. However, outfall discharges and stream flows are comprised of both groundwater and urban runoff. That ratio of natural and unnatural flow changes. Probably obvious is that it changes depending on where you are in our watershed management area, but it also changes depending on the time of year, and it may change in the future. And some flow might have lower pollutant levels than others, independent of source. So if we simply follow MS4 permit rules regarding source of water, we may miss the opportunity to leave relatively clean, beneficial water in the system. We also want to consider other regional water management strategies. We don't work in a vacuum. There are a lot of great other agencies and organizations who work with us and beside us within the watershed management area. So our water quality improvement plan determined that to improve dry weather stream functions, we were most able to directly influence the stressor of dry weather flows from MS4 outfalls. The water quality improvement plan also outlines a suite of strategies that we have on hand to choose from. And that ranges from upland source control to outfall structural controls. And knowing our choices and our abilities is really important, but it doesn't actually tell us which to do nor where. So to determine that, we had a few data gaps to fill. That's when we developed some answerable questions based on our consideration and based on our abilities and choices. First, are our streams augmented or depleted? Have streams been perennialized? How does that relate to our biological beneficial uses? And how would changing flow magnitude, timing, duration, or frequency change anything biologically? Second, what's coming out of our outfalls and into the streams? How much of it is natural dry weather flow? What's the quality? How much of it is illicit discharge? Plus, what are other projects happening? And how would our actions impact them? What have others learned in their strategy implementation that could influence our decisions? So these kind of culminate into three large questions that we have. What are our receiving waters like? What discharges from our outfalls? And what are other programs and projects? What are others doing? We answer these questions with 2 data gathering and data synthesizing special studies, our flow ecology special study, and our outfall capture feasibility studies. So up first, we study our receiving waters through our flow ecology special study. Before diving into ecology, we look at flows in our watershed management area. We created a comprehensive hydrologic model to combine what we know of our stormwater and stream networks. The model divides the study area into about 70 sub-basins and looks at inputs and outputs to those stream segments on a daily basis. So that means we're able to model what flows are like year-round, like fall pulse flow, winter base flows, peak flows, spring recession flows, and summer base flows. All of it we're able to model. So we did model 3 different conditions. First, we modeled what's currently happening, very important, using current land uses, slopes, soils, climates, water impoundments, water usage, water extraction. And then we did a reference condition. So that's not a specific point in time that we did. It's instead just the current condition without urbanization. So we did that by taking out urban inputs, urban land uses, and diversions. And we also, the third type of model that we did was modeled for potential future conditions, including how enhanced water conservation would affect in-stream flows and how climate change would impact flows. So once we more fully understood our flows and our watershed, we then looked at the ecology of our study area. To do so, we started with hydrologic alteration. We looked at where and how the current condition model deviates from the reference condition model. Again, that reference isn't a point in time. It's not a management target we're trying to get back to. It's just a prioritization tool, because deviation from a non-urbanized system is more likely to be vulnerable to unnatural inputs that vary in quality and quantity over time, and it's more likely to have biological impacts. So we wanted to compare deviation from this non-urbanized modeled system to biological alteration. And we did that in 2 ways, step 2 and 3 here. First, with some indices that combine a lot of data regarding physical habitat, pollutants, sediment, water chemistry, etc., to estimate stream benthic macroinvertebrates and algal conditions. And then second, we looked at higher trophic level species of willow, arroyo toad, and arroyo chub to model which flow ranges may support focal species and how far are we currently from those flow ranges. So switching gears from looking at our receiving waters, we have our outfall capture feasibility study to then better understand what's discharging from our outfalls. We take water samples at individual outfalls as well as source locations, including potable water, recycled water, raw sewage, and groundwater seeps. Because we know where these sources, where the source samples were taken from, we tried multiple methods to kind of figure out a unique source signature for each one of these. And then we could look for that source signature in the water that we sampled that was coming out of our outfalls. So this helps us to determine unique mixture of potential sources at each outfall. I do want to note, while source of the water was a large part of these studies, we also did study the quality and the quantity of the water using detailed flow monitoring and conventional water quality analyses. But going back to that source question, we used a lot of different methods with a lot of different abilities to distinguish between our 4 sources. So the chart on the left here will help us walk through the various analyses. On the top, you'll see the color-coded and labeled columns. S is for sewage, R is for recycled water, P for potable, and G for groundwater. And as you look through the advanced analyses, each can distinguish between sources differently. So, for example, NGS can distinguish between all 4 of the sources, whereas like water isotopes can say it's either groundwater or one of these other 3. So the chart is definitely an oversimplification because not all methods gave quantitative distinctions like the little neat rectangles might suggest of this chart, but it is a good visual of the cumulative lines of evidence that we gathered. I did link the report here if you want to read more about these advanced methods, but I'm going to go through them very quickly for the sake of time. So next generation sequencing, it attempts to identify distinct bacterial signatures for each source sample type. And while in general, these results agreed with the other methods, we do suggest that it is a secondary line of evidence because it wasn't always super consistent. We tested 39 different chemicals found in pharmaceutical and personal care products. The sewage-specific PPCPs included acetaminophen and methylparaben, which are easily removed from wastewater during treatment processes. And then there were 5 other PPCPs that were more recalcitrant and indicative of either sewage or recycled water. So while the absence of these chemicals in outflow discharge doesn't really prove the absence of a source, it can be, on the flip side, a flag that either one or the other is likely present, which is very similar to HF183. So HF183 human DNA marker concentrations are generally much higher in sewage compared to recycled water sources, but it may be diluted or degraded before reaching the outfall. So like PPCPs, it's another indicator one or the other is likely present. We did try to use the PMA method to attempt to distinguish viable bacteria in sewage from non-viable bacteria deactivated through treatment, but it wasn't as clear-cut as we hoped in this study, and additional research is needed to use HF183 PMA as a sole indicator of sewage. So next up is water isotopes. They're highly stable, have been used in multiple studies to distinguish imported water sources. Imported water in South Orange County is things like the recycled, potable, and sewage water that we get. And then that distinguishes that imported water from local water sources like rainwater-derived groundwater. So most outfalls did fall between groundwater and imported water, suggesting a mix. But the cool thing about this analysis is that it does actually allow for a more quantitative estimation of the mixture of the 2. So there were a couple outfalls with less than 10% groundwater contributions and a handful with more than 90% groundwater contributions. And you'll see in our example later how this quantification is helpful when deciding which action to take. Finally, ion analysis compares ionic signatures of samples. It was the local water sources were different than that of imported water source, similar to water isotopes, but it's not quantitative, so it's suggested as a secondary line of evidence. So overall, the multiple lines of evidence gave us a great picture of natural versus unnatural water in the 20 outfalls we studied. Whenever we gather data to inform our decisions, we want to work with stakeholders. We have a robust stakeholder and technical advisory group for the flow ecology special study. Through many workshops and one-on-one meetings, we teased out our study scope, solidified our assumptions, and benefited from research and data made available to us. The outfall-specific studies were conducted knowing that ongoing stakeholder coordination will be used to implement any project at any of the outfalls. And in general, stakeholders are an ongoing part of our data-driven process. So this last step in our process is really exciting. It's taking the data from our monitoring and research, gaining insight, and then moving into action. So here's an example application of our data with a hypothetical map of a hypothetical watershed. It's similar to a result we'll have from the flow ecology special study, where we've looked at how any altered hydrology has impacted biology in this stream. So up top, we might want to monitor this segment in case future conditions may change biological ecological integrity. And in the middle, we want to protect that stream segment because it's providing the benefits we want. The segments below are tagged as needing additional management. So our results would indicate if biology would benefit from more or less water and most beneficial time of year for those ranges. Maybe the recommended flows for our various benefits overlap, maybe they don't, and there's decisions that need to be made then. To keep this example simple, let's just say the results suggest we lower dry weather flows in this reach to improve biological condition across the species that we're looking at. So then we look at outfalls nearby and we see, oh, there's an outfall capture feasibility study that, yes, it seems like this specific outfall is a majority imported water, and a structural flow capture setup would be withholding a majority unnatural flows, which is in line with our unnatural water balance hopes. And let's say the quality and quantity are also in line with what we'd want to take out. So we definitely are going to be working with stakeholders in any action that we do. And let's say we see that there's an existing project downstream. We'll want to ask if our management actions would negatively impact them. Also, building these systems and projects is expensive. Maybe working with stakeholders uncovers that there's already a planned project just downstream of where our high priority location is. And maybe we instead team up with that stakeholder and make it a multi-benefit project to actually assist in getting an actual project built. So hopefully this hypothetical example walked you through how these two studies and working with project planning groups in the area can help pinpoint actual locations for projects. There are a lot of different permutations to these results. Sometimes it'll be that we want more water in the streams, or a stream rehabilitation beyond just flow management. Or, as I mentioned before, it's not possible to cover all of the benefits that we want. There are still going to be a lot of tough decisions, but data from well-designed studies can help make these decisions more objective and scientifically based. So to recap, this approach has worked well for us. I hope the data we talked about today and how we set up the framework for it to culminate into relevant insight and actionable action will be helpful to your organization as well. And we might have a few minutes of Q&A before the next presentation, but I wanted to be sure to thank the Southern California Coastal Water Research Program and SQUIRP and Geosyntec Consultants for their invaluable work with us in these studies. Please feel free to contact me after this symposium with any questions that you have.
Thank you so much, Amanda. That was really interesting. I wanted to see, is there any Q&A or any questions for Amanda?
Not at this time.
Okay.
Thank
So,
you,
Amanda, I see that you guys are using the CSCI and the ASCII scores to see, what the biological indices are for the streams, and I think that's a really cool way to see if the waters need to be protected, with the flow regimes. So, thank you so much for that. That was really great. And if anybody does have questions or anything that they want to talk to Amanda about afterwards, go ahead and jot down her email address here. And thank you so much, Amanda. That was really good.
Thank you.
Our next presentation is by Paul Shipman and Abdul Khan from the California Department of Water Resources. And it's on water budget development. So you're ready to take it away whenever you get situated there, Paul.
Hi, Tony. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hello, everybody. My name is Paul Shipman with the California Department of Water Resources. My topic today is water budget development, putting data to work. Also on the phone today is Abdul Khan, who is the project manager for the water budget work discussed in this presentation. And both of our emails are provided there if anybody would like to contact us afterwards. Water data can be difficult to understand. It often comes in a CSV format or other simplified formats, sometimes with mixed documentation, and rarely is summarized into a format that is directly able to be translated into a decision. However, the ultimate purpose of water data is to answer a water management question. While there are a huge variety of water management related questions in need of answering, many water management questions could benefit from the insights provided by developing a water budget. A few examples of questions like that are shown on the screen here. The first step in answering those questions is to gather your data. I wanted to highlight the California Natural Resources Agency Open Data Portal, seen on the screen, which has a huge amount of the state's water and ecological data available on it and can be helpful in answering these questions. A lot of work has gone into getting those data sets online in the format that can be used. And if you find that data sets that are missing or need to be in different formats, there is a contact option available on the website to help let us know that and improve these data sets. When you're answering a data management question, it's important to understand what information you really need. While sometimes the data may not be available and an assumption has to be made, it's important to first identify the data you would want to use if it was available, as it will help you understand the limitations of your results because of the assumptions that were made. With relation to water management questions that use water budgets, DWR has recently released a handbook for water budget development with or without models that has checklists and tables to help identify needed information. Included in the handbook is a 3D schematic that characterizes important flows of water that, when quantified, can help you better understand the movement of water in a region. The understanding of movement of water will help answer water management questions more accurately and completely, as you won't miss out on unintended consequences of water management actions that can happen when trying to simplify a problem too much. The 3D schematic is designed to be flexible and can be modified to fit the management area or decision. Additionally, the 3D schematic can be used to help identify water budget information you would like to have but do not yet have access to inform new data collection. Along with the schematic, included in the handbook is an example accounting template that carefully delineates what flows to count and how to count them. To avoid double counting of water and correctly characterize flows. There's a template for each of the three systems, including the land system, the surface water system, the groundwater system, and these systems come together to form the total water budget, which is a characterization of all flows entering or leaving an area, including changes in storage. The handbook includes many other details not covered in this presentation, including methods, examples, and data sources for the calculation of each water budget component. However, once you've developed a water budget or even answered your water management question, you aren't done. Communicating your data, process, results, and decisions through easy-to-use and understandable visualizations is critical to build trust in the decision being taken. On the screen is an example of a water budget visualization developed through a pilot project in the 2015 to 2017 timeframe. When communicating decisions, it's important to include visualization of input data and high-level assumptions for multiple reasons. First, this allows stakeholders to explore and verify the data used in the study was correct and appropriate data for the conclusion that was reached. Second, if there are errors in the process or data, stakeholders can help identify and correct those mistakes, which leads to a better decision being made, an outcome that should be desirable for all of us. Summarizing results that lead to decisions in meaningful ways allow interested parties to understand the logic behind the decision, increase the understanding of water in your area, and advance the state of the science overall. One of the most exciting parts of the explosion of business intelligence tools like Tableau or Power BI is that each person that makes a creative visualization solution can be an example to all those that follow. I know I've seen several very cool visualization solutions in the presentations earlier today. Finally, share your work and be open to criticisms. One of the fundamental principles of science is to share information and allow others to verify or disprove findings to advance the overall understanding of the world. On the slide is a screenshot from our story map explaining the development of the water budget handbook mentioned earlier, including why it was developed, what it contains, and where we are hoping to go next. Please check it out if you're interested, and we'd love to hear your feedback on the handbook. This last slide contains links for the various resources that have been shown in the slides during the presentation, including the story map just mentioned, the handbook itself, the templates from the handbook in Excel format, and the example table dashboards from the 2017 pilot project. I hope this presentation was helpful and be happy to answer any questions. And I'm sorry I forgot to put contact information at the end of the presentation, but it was at the beginning, and I would love to have you contact us if you have other things you want to follow up with offline. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. So do we have any questions for Paul in the Q&A?
We do not have any questions at this time. Well, what part of the water budget would be most helpful to add going forward?
Any one part of the water budget, that depends, I guess, what question you're answering. So water budgets can be used for a lot of different reasons. And I would argue that just actually having a water budget would be the most helpful thing to add to most management decisions. A lot of decisions don't include full water budgets, which are really useful because not only do they answer kind of your question that you're wondering about, but they also help you just understand the flow of water in the area better, which will then help you answer follow-up questions that often come out of initial, studies. By having that more comprehensive approach, you often save time in the long run and allow yourself to have a more robust answer to the question you had initially. And those water budgets involve a lot of different components. Probably, if I had to pick one that was, most critical or hard to analyze, although a lot has been done more recently, I would say ET is always a tricky one and used for a lot of critical things. Although, there's been some really exciting work done in the ET in the ET world in improving that estimation. Sorry, ET is evapotranspiration. I shouldn't use an acronym. Thanks.
And one more question. Does this water budget data conform to a data standard?
We don't have a data standard for water budgets yet that we've implemented. We have a recommended format in the handbook, but the handbook is totally voluntary. We'd love to further refine that, and we're hoping to, we're really excited about the work that's going on with EDF and the consortium on development of a water accounting platform. I'm hoping that maybe the work there can help create some standardized accounting. We have example standardized accounting templates in the handbook, but maybe further work will allow us to create a more standardized data format for what all this data should be in. It's very hard to do as there's a lot of data and there's always exceptions. Every time you think you have the answer, you run into another exception or side case that makes it hard to say that your one format is correct. Abdul, did you want to add into that?
The only thing I would add is in terms of the water budget handbook, we have, instead of going the standards route for data, we have gone the route of standardizing in the understanding of the components. And we have developed, and this was developed through internal DWS discussion with State Water Board, NGOs, academia and such, what we are calling the common vocabulary, meaning that for each of the components, for the land, surface water, and groundwater system, we have provided a definition based on this consensus among multiple entities. And that is one part of the standardization. It doesn't talk about the data standards. And the other part of standardization is how do we organize the water budget related information. And that's the one Paul mentioned, we have 4 different accounting templates, one for the land system, inflow and outflows, one for surface water system, one for groundwater system, and one for the total system, what we call the total water budget. So we actually did not investigate the issue of data standardization. We are more looking at, can we start with having a common vocabulary and then having a standardized way of, organizing and presenting the information. In our view, if we can achieve that and have, the local agencies and other entities who are working with water budget related or developing water budget or using water budget, having that standardization through the water accounting templates and common vocabulary, that would be a great step forward in our view.
Great, thank you.
Is that it for the questions, Peter?
Yes.
So Paul, I'm pretty sure that water budgeting is a challenge as it is in like arid regions, but it's probably even more of a challenge with climate change issues. So did you guys look at that or consider that, the climate change issues?
Yeah, so climate change is, of course, of keen interest to Department of Water Resources, and we have a lot of work on that and a large body of knowledge is that. For the water budget handbook, we focused primarily on developing current water budgets, as we knew that was kind of an urgent need that a lot of people had right now because due to the passage of SGMA. We hope to expand the body of knowledge with further work on that, which there's several things we'd like to do, of course. You never get to do everything you'd like to do, but one of the things we'd like to do is also additional information on how to select a water budget zone, information on how to estimate uncertainty, which is really difficult when you're looking at a full water budget, since each data element has its own uncertainty. And how do you combine that together when you're looking at a water budget that includes all these composite uncertainties can be difficult. And of course, the development of future water budgets would be of great interest to us as well, and that would include kind of more detailed guidance on climate change. But the principles in terms of the flows themselves will be the same whether or not you were developing a current water budget or a future water budget.
Great work.
This is Abdul. I just want to add, if you have a minute, I just want to add currently what we are looking at in terms of going from the water budget handbook, trying to build what we are calling a water accounting system with 3 basic sort of components, looking at the people side, meaning that it has to be a broad agency and stakeholder driven process, including training. And the process part, which Paul alluded to, we want to actually strengthen the water budget handbook with additional water accounting guides for the water budget component indexing, and Paul mentioned that, and then water budget zone selection, and water budget zone aggregation, and then uncertain estimates. And what you just mentioned, the climate change, maybe that's something we should also consider. And the large part, people, process, and the technology part is, Paul showed some screenshots from the pilot dashboard we developed in 2015-2017 timeline. We are actually embarking on what we are calling a water accounting tool. It is built upon the dashboard, but it is not only about visualization and communication. It will include synthesis of information and also provide a scenario assessment framework. And that has just started. Obviously, in some future time, maybe 4 to 6 months from now, we would definitely try to, if there is an opportunity, then try to present more, up-to-date information on how all of these are coming together to build a water accounting system for California. Thank you.
Thanks, Abdul. So we do have a few more minutes. Are there any other questions? Or Paul, did you want to add anything else? We've still got 5 minutes, or we can move on. Or are there any new questions, I guess I should ask, that have popped up?
No.
All right, thank you. Yep, water budget is definitely something we need here in California. Well, thank you so much, Paul and Abdul, and we'll go ahead and move on to the next presentation. The OC Orange County Stormwater Tools, an open source platform for stormwater asset inventory and performance modeling by Austin Orr from Geosyntec Consultants and Eric Rademacher from Orange County Public Works.
Great, thank you. So as you just heard, we're here to talk today about Orange County Stormwater Tools. Next slide. My name is Eric Rademacher. I'm an environmental scientist with the Orange County Department of Public Works, and my co-presenter is Austin Orr, an engineer from Geosyntec Consultants. Next slide. I'm going to start off today talking about the regulatory drivers for our project. Then Austin is going to talk about some of the technical information and some of the detail that goes on behind the scenes. And then I'm going to move back into talking about our experience adopting and using the tool. Next slide. So jumping straight into background, the County of Orange is split into 2 jurisdictions, with the northern portion of the county covered under the Santa Ana Regional MS4 permit, and the southern portion covered under the San Diego Regional MS4 permit. As we work through that, we partner with the 34 cities in the County of Orange, with the County of Orange acting as the principal permittee. And we also partner with the Orange County Flood Control District. Next slide. So as you can imagine, that leads to a pretty wide variety of stakeholder interests and regulatory workflows to work through. We're fortunate that some requirements are uniform throughout the county, and we're able to get a pretty unified approach on those. But we also have some pretty varied requirements as in South County, we're implementing our water quality improvement plan. And North County is kind of working to implement their current regulatory requirements, but they're also really keeping an eye out on the horizon for some anticipated new requirements that should be coming up with their upcoming permit renewal. Next slide. So again, we've got a pretty wide variety of data sets and requirements and workflows. And OC Stormwater Tools was really built from a desire to bring everything together into a single, unified, cohesive front. We know that we have a lot of great information on our asset inventory from some of our planning documents. We know we have a lot of great information from our survey department with where things are and how water moves through our watershed. We know we've got a lot of great O&M information from our maintenance groups. And we know we've got a lot of great technical information that shows how our BMPs operate and how we're affecting the water quality within our watershed as storm flows move into and through our MS4. And again, Stormwater Tools is really built to kind of bring all of that together to give us a single approach to solving some of our problems. With that, next slide, I'll pass it over to Austin to talk about the features and functionality of the tool.
Thank you, Eric. As mentioned, my name is Austin Orr, and I'm with Geosyntec Consultants. I'm a civil engineer, and I am one of the software developers who contributed to the OCST modeling engine that quantifies the water quality benefits. But I'd like to start with a brief overview of how the team set about building the system that can support the objectives that Eric just laid out for us. And the first is to take advantage of existing tools that we were able to leverage an investment made by Nevada Division of Environmental Protection and the Lahontan Regional Board in the Lake Tahoe area, where the development team has helped create a web platform with inventory management capabilities. And being web-based allows us to support a wide range of user roles across a large geospatial area and multi-jurisdictional involvement. And some of the requirements that Eric mentioned require both desktop in the office workflows and field support workflows. And so web-based tools are a good fit for solving all of those different kinds of problems. Our approach is to also try to rapidly deliver functionality and get feedback for iterating and improving. This builds momentum and engagement and provides benefit really fast for our users. And the platform is open source. So this tool that we've built upon, the Lake Tahoe Info Stormwater Tools, is open source. And we are continuing this code sharing philosophy to foster that existing pattern of interagency cooperation to help our partners and agencies pool their resources and share the costs of software development. So these development decisions led us to build this tool with a modular structure. So we have an inventory module for tracking the data about our stormwater treatment resources. We've also built in a number of advanced BMP delineation capabilities and workflows to support our users while they create a detailed inventory. And then a couple of modules for quantifying the performance of our inventory. The trash module for tracking trash capture objectives and the modeling module for quantifying water quality performance. So taking each of these modules one by one, our inventory module tracks key project details like ownership and funding source and physical size and configuration and the location of the facility. And it also takes responsibility for supporting field teams in their operations and maintenance tracking workflows. Once those descriptive features are populated in the inventory, our users can start tackling the other primary complication, which is to define how these facilities relate to one another and to their upstream drainage areas. The tool supports creating delineations at multiple scales, so users can create delineations in centralized regional facilities that treat a large upstream area and may have upstream BMPs in them. So in this way, the tool supports nesting. And distributed BMPs are smaller scale facilities. They are typically standalone and they might treat just the adjacent land surface or receive flow from maybe one immediate upstream BMP, like in a small treatment train of BMPs. And so for these BMPs, we have a set of delineation tools like bulk uploaders and a web editor that allows a user to manually draw and edit, like I'm showing here in the graphic. We also support a trace from a point feature, which leverages a high resolution DEM to sort of build that drainage area for our users. And so in this way, we're able to meet a lot of our users where they are with their data. A lot of them come to this tool with data of their own, and we support different mechanisms for loading that data or creating new data. And then we also are supporting their WQMP sites, their water quality management plan sites. And these are typically groups of individual parcels that would be grouped together into one project. The trash module leverages this inventory and the delineations inside it to determine the trash management coverage for each jurisdiction in OCST. So the tool supports users managing their land use designations, performing field activities like their on-land visual assessment efforts with tablet-compatible web forms, and it enables users to track and report their progress toward meeting their trash management goals. And that brings us to the water quality modeling module. So to meet our reporting requirements, this engine needs to be able to characterize the long-term expected performance of our BMP inventory and produce summaries of the water quality benefits for both dry and wet weather conditions. It needs to run fast enough to be usable on the web, and it needs to stay in lockstep with the state of our inventory as our users make changes. So if someone adds a BMP or changes a delineation, tool needs to recompute a whole new set of results and correctly update the downstream BMPs and analysis points results. So how does this modeling module bring these capabilities into Orange County stormwater tools? Well, in this process diagram on the left-hand side, we can see all the components that might be changing frequently, like editing or adding an entry in the inventory or updating a delineation boundary, and refreshing the GIS result services to figure out what land areas are inside each of our project delineations. And then our watershed database is periodically accumulating these changes and sending the new or changed information over to the modeling engine side on the right-hand side of the slide, where we begin to bring in our nitty-gritty science of modeling and simulation. Amanda in a previous talk mentioned the flow ecology special study. So we are leveraging the results of that with their calibrated runoff simulations for the region. And we've done a number of long-term continuous simulations to form nomographs over different areas of the study area, so that wherever we place a BMP, we know how it will transform volume capture performance. And we are also leveraging all the data in the International BMP database to figure out how these BMPs transform the water quality. And so with all of the science there on the right-hand side, we can start to answer the questions and produce results for every project in the watershed database and help folks leverage their reporting requirements. So that's all fun and exciting and good science and things, but what do our users need to actually bother with? What will they see when they use Orange County stormwater tools? So in this case, they don't need to specify very many things. Actually, for this infiltration trench, only 3 parameters needed to be entered by the user. In fact, we're able to support over 20 different BMP types with the tool, and each only has between 2 and 5 required parameters in order for the tool to quantify their benefits. So with those few parameters and a delineation, we can process the site and return detailed load reduction performance and volume capture performance for every facility in our inventory. And since this tool runs on the web, we're able to connect to our results and the inputs databases really easily via web endpoints and bring them into Power BI. So here on screen, I have constructed a simple summary in the same format, but to summarize an entire region worth of results. So I've got all of our jurisdiction results on this slide. And with that, I'll pass it back over to Eric to talk about the adoption and use of the tool by our jurisdiction.
Great. Thank you, Austin. Yeah, so one of the first things we learned as we began adopting and using the tool, next slide, we found that it was beneficial to designate kind of a single core group of super users who really understood the tool and kind of some of the background information we were going through. And we really utilized that core of expertise to develop a strong base set of data, a strong provisional set of information that we could enter into our inventory and really get started working with that. As we went through that process, we realized we also had some great opportunity to integrate OC stormwater tools with some of our existing GIS databases and some of our existing Excel spreadsheet data. And we developed a series of tools to bulk upload or bulk import all of our ArcGIS data and all of our kind of legacy Excel data into the tool. Next slide. And that really helped us get that early foundation, that early set of expertise, because we were able to leverage that as we went through and expanded the tool and refined certain features and implemented our more complex modules, like our modeling module and our trash module. We really got an opportunity to start strong and refine our expertise as we went through. And it was really a great help towards getting everything into a good working position. And I'm really proud to say that as of this year, we've inventoried over 15,000 provisional BMPs, kind of on the back end within the system. And we've got our official public launch of our public-facing website. And alongside that, we're also beginning to use the data that Austin mentioned in our annual reporting. Next slide. This is a great example of some of what we're doing to use our data in our annual reporting. This is our data dashboard for our unnatural water balance, highest priority water quality condition. Austin also mentioned we've got some great APIs, so we're able to use Power BI with OC stormwater tools to get a live data dashboard of our BMT performance at any time we'd like to refresh it. So So what you can see here is, again, based on our BMP type, location, and how the water is moving through our watershed, and what we know about how our BMPs are operating, we're able to flag how much water is infiltrated, prevented, treated, or diverted as it moves through BMS4. Next slide. And then our last slide, or our last topic, we'd like to invite everyone as members of the public to come visit OC Stormwater Tools at ocstormwatertools.org. Next slide. If you navigate to the site and click on the Find a BMP button, you'll be able to browse all of our publicly approved BMPs. So anything that's been entered and reviewed and thoroughly vetted for public consumption will be available on the website. You'll also get to play around and look at some of our drainage areas and look at a BMP basis or BMP by BMP basis and see what sort of water quality benefit is being provided by our asset inventory within South Orange County and in parts of North Orange County. And next slide. With that, we'd like to invite you to reach out after this presentation to either myself or Austin Orr. And again, visit ocstormwatertools.org to visit our website. And as Austin mentioned, this is an open source project. So if you're interested in accessing the code, the source code yourself to start your own project, you can obtain that code from GitHub with the link at the bottom of the screen. And with that, are there any questions?
Way to go, you guys, on leveraging resources and great tools for water managers to use. Anna placed the website in the website link in the chat, and also code. Get the code. Yeah. And are there any questions, Peter?
There are none right now, but every time I say that, they come pouring in, but I don't have any questions right now.
Okay. Well, we still have a few minutes. So if anybody is shy and wants to contact Eric or Austin, their email addresses are up here. And there's a few other email addresses for, I'm guessing, partners in this project. So thanks so much. And we really appreciated your talk this afternoon. And I hope that somebody will give you guys an email and want to talk later. They're probably just shy right now. So thanks, guys.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we've come up to our lightning talk for this session. It's on waste discharge requirement data management, past, present, and future, by TJ Middlemis-Clark, Kristina Olmos, Stephanie Torres, and Laurel Wardrop from the California Water Boards.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Stephanie, TJ, Laurel, and I are here on behalf of the Waste Discharge Requirements Program across the water boards. Our program is responsible for issuing permits for and overseeing wastewater treatment systems that dispose to land in a way that protects underlying groundwater quality.
Our story starts.
We're going to jump into our video since it started. Go ahead. Oh, sorry about that. Greg, are you able to start it over?
Yeah, sorry. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to advance and I got ahead of myself.
No problem. I'll just finish up and then I'll have you advance. You might have to go back one screen because it will start automatically when you skip. There you go. Sorry about that. Our program is responsible for issuing permits for wastewater treatment systems that dispose to land in a way that protects groundwater and public health. We're an older water boards program with multiple inefficient data systems that are only partially public. So last year we created a data management team to streamline these systems and improve transparency. So Greg, if you could advance the slide now. We're going to go back to the future and share a video about the beginning of our data improvement journey.
Our story starts with Doc in the present. Great Scott, he yells. The flux capacitor is leaking uranium at my car wash. Well, folks, this is looking like a mixed waste discharge that might pollute groundwater. The water board hits the scene to investigate and tells Doc he needs a permit. Doc has discovered the hard way that every discharge is regulated. Doc applies for a permit, but the process lacks transparency. What is the status? Is someone working on it? When can we wash cars again? Doc's permit request lands on the desk of an overwhelmed water board staffer. To issue the permit, water board staff must collate and review all the permit materials before checking and updating several databases. Getting through these steps depends on staffing resources, timing, and filing method. Marty tries to think of ways to improve this horrible process. Doc has an idea. Marty, the future! There is a rumor that water board staff are working on a plan to increase efficiency of data management. Online applications, one data system, public data integration with other water board programs, and all regions. That's heavy, Doc. Let's do it. So Marty heads to the future to see if permitting really is different.
Marty zips into the water board's offices of the future to get their new and improved data system. The rumors are true. The future system functionality does enhance the program data management, including a new electronic application process. Marty takes the future data system and brings it to the past as a solution. Marty is bringing this information back to the past to change the application process for Doc. Marty is back from the future to swap the systems in the water board's office while no one is looking, changing the future and the present. The old water board's data system disappears, replaced by the future, efficient, and streamlined methodology.
And we are back to the car wash. Doc is still leaking uranium and wash water and will apply for that permit. Except this time, permitting will be efficient, thanks to the future data system and the hard work of future state staff. Doc applies using a beautiful digital online system. Great Scott! Doc gets a nearly instant email notification. His permit is being reviewed, no more paper abyss. And seamlessly, the system emails Doc his car wash permit. Doc can log in to see all his permit requirements, and he can upload his data to comply with his permit online. Plus, the public can access all the car wash facility data. An efficient, accessible future awaits. The end. Or is it only the beginning?
Okay, so we hope you enjoyed our silly video. We are coordinating a statewide effort to support the State Water Board's One Water data vision to improve the way we manage and use data and information internally and externally. Our real-world data system or charter plan was just completed, and our vision is to integrate our data into GeoTracker, an existing groundwater database, and efficiently sync our other two databases. Our specific goals are to create an electronic application process, like you saw in the video, create a publicly accessible open electronic filing system in the GeoTracker database, maintain a public database of wastewater facility information and water quality data in the GeoTracker database, and semi-automate a discharger's permit compliance, such as sending a notification when reports are late. And finally, we want to provide training on all of these elements. So in conclusion, our program needs, and we are committed to creating an efficient data system to optimize staff and permittees' time, ensure permit compliance, make data-driven decisions and solutions, and improve transparency and data accessibility with the public and stakeholders. And that's all we have for today. If you guys have any questions.
Thank you, Kristina. Peter, are there any questions?
There are no questions at this time, Tony.
Okay. Well, that was a really interesting way to provide the information. So we thank you for that. I have one question for you, Kristina. Is the water boards getting a DeLorean?
I hope so. Or a Tesla. I'll take a Tesla.
Yeah, that's like the new DeLorean, huh? All right. Well, thank you so much. Did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Actually, before we move on, I have a question. I tried to put it in the Q&A, but I couldn't do it. So how far in the future are we talking? You mentioned that your plan was just kind of finalized. This is pretty exciting stuff. So when should folks be kind of looking out for this DeLorean-ridden data future that you speak of?
The application portal is in draft format right now. We're testing it out at our regional office for some small systems, but rolling it out across the state, I would assume would be, more like a year out, and then all of these pieces in the next couple of years.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you so much to you and your team, and we appreciate you guys presenting today. Our next talk is on open source dashboards for operational control at wastewater facilities, presented by Ryan Shepard from Databrook LLC and Patrick McGrath from the San Luis Obispo Water Resource and Reclamation Facility.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, whenever you're ready, go ahead and take it away.
Good afternoon, everybody. I actually just got a text from my co-presenter. I just got a text from my co-presenter, Ryan, who informed me that his computer had just crashed. So if we could have just a couple of minutes while we get sorted here, we'll jump on in just one moment.
Yeah, we got time.
Great.
Everyone, get up and stretch. Do some jumping jacks.
Perfect. Thank you.
So it's been a really interesting afternoon. This is our fourth talk coming up here. We've got a couple more. And, Greg, did you want to say something?
I was just going to join you here in the little coffee room chatting about how great today's been. So
It has been. It's been really interesting and just learning so many new things.
yeah, the range of talks and, the quality of the presentations and just watching how everyone's evolving and iterating in the same area sort of every year, but just getting better is so rewarding.
Yes, it is. Very exciting.
Looks like they're here.
Hi there.
Hi, Ryan. Welcome.
So of course, I'm here watching this presentation, and just 5 minutes ago, there was a little blip in my power, so my computer shut down. My internet still hasn't restored, but I'm on a hotspot from my phone. So if you guys were waiting too long. All right.
Chapter management, by the way.
I'm going to request control. Okay. All right. So my name is Ryan Shepard. I'm the founder of Databrook. We do data analysis oriented toward water and wastewater utilities.
And I'm Patrick McGrath. I'm one of the wastewater utilities, and I'm an operator with the City of San Luis Obispo's Water Resource Recovery Facility.
And our goal today is to share some open source dashboards that we've implemented, and we think you can too, that help improve operational control at the water facility. By the way, if we use the term SLOW or WRF, that's San Luis Obispo Water Reclamation Facility, we try to remember, but sometimes it just slips out. So this, I don't need to spend much time on this slide because it's kind of a theme here. When it came to SLOW, they were already collecting a variety of data. There was data coming from automated SCADA collection, daily check sheets that the operators do, lab data. So this data is all being aggregated and stored, but that doesn't do much good unless you have the ability to create meaning from that data.
And creating meaning from that data is all well and good. One of the things that we identified early on in this project that we'll get to is creating uniform meaning, because you can look at, we're all familiar with a graph like this. It's just a regular old time series line graph. And it's up to the operators to build these graphs, and it's up to the operators to extrapolate operational decisions from these graphs. And the problem is, you could have two operators sit down and look at this chart here and come up with 2, 3, or 4 operational strategies based on the information that it's presenting. And so we really wanted to be sure that we could have this standardized approach to operations. All the more important, at our facility, we've had a wave of retirements, and I know it's affecting the entire industry. And so we wanted to really build something that would harness this standardized approach to interpreting the data.
It can be really tempting to start with charts or raw data, and I think of these things as the answers. So in order to really get to the root of things, it's important to identify the key questions and involve the operators in this process.
And so it doesn't really matter if you're an operator, a maintenance technician, a lab analyst, a utilities director, supervisor, whatever. At the end of the day, the key question is, how is my plant doing? How is this facility actually running? And this question is all the more important. We're in the middle of a facility-wide upgrade, and I'd encourage you to Google Slow Water Plus or find us at slowwaterproject.org to find more information about the project. But essentially, we wanted to figure out the answer to this question. In my years of experience, it's always been 5-10 minutes of sometimes objective, sometimes subjective answers to this very question. And we're like, well, wouldn't it be cool if you could say, hey, my facility is running at 96%? There you go.
So that's what we sought out to do. And we built a dashboard containing a couple different components. And I'm going to dive into each of these a little bit. So there's a Grafana dashboard we borrowed from statistical process control charts, and we came up with a health score calculation. First off, the dashboard. So Grafana is an awesome tool. It's open source, so free to use commercially or not. It's web-based, which means you can pull it up on your cell phone, you can view it on your desktop. And there's a little bit of trickiness to standing it up. IT would need to spin up a Grafana instance on a server and be able to point it to a database. But once that's done, it's fairly easy to create really visually pleasing dashboards to visualize whatever kind of metrics you're interested in. Secondly, we borrowed from statistical process control. So this is a concept that's been used in manufacturing for decades. And one of the key features of it, well, at its core, it's really about using statistics to drive your processes. One of the key features you'll see are these control charts, which are visualized here on the screen. So it's basically just picking some of your key parameters, visualizing them as a time series, and then drawing upper and lower boundaries on them. Now, traditionally with SPC, those boundaries are determined by taking a standard deviation of that parameter over time and then doing 3x that. So that kind of defines that 99% of the time, the parameters should be within these boundaries, and it starts to give some context to those graphs floating in space. And finally, we came up with a health score algorithm, and Patrick can walk you through a little bit of how we did that.
Yeah, so we had implemented these SPC, the statistical process control charts at the WRF, and we just wanted to take it one step farther. And so in developing the SPCs, our facility is broken out into different units based on the processes that are involved. And this table on the right is showing our processes and just a snip of some of the KPIs that are associated with each process. And so once we've listed out all of those processes, we wanted to do a couple of things. One, we wanted to generate operator buy-in, right? We didn't want to build a tool that wasn't going to be used, and it was just one more thing for an operator to remember the login information for. We wanted to build something meaningful and helpful, and so we deviated a little bit from the statistical process control charts, in that we sort of eliminated the statistics from it, and we came up with rather than determining our LCLs and UCLs with 3x, we said we need some hard and fast limits, and that happened for a couple of reasons. One, the operator buy-in that I mentioned. Two, we have hard and fast regulatory limits that we can't exceed. And so there's not a whole lot of room for variability or statistics in that. It's hard and fast. It is what it is. And then thirdly, we really wanted to capture some of the institutional knowledge so that in addition to being a helpful tool for daily operations, it's also a training tool for newer operators that can glean some of the knowledge that is being passed on by these people that have worked at the facility for 10, 15, 20 years. And so we did that. We sat down as a group and said, okay, well, what are our LCLs and UCLs? When the process is running just perfect, what are our bounds? And so once we've identified those, the next step was to assign weights. All of our regulatory stuff, that was going to get a higher weight, and all of the sort of less important process control, process efficiency stuff would be assigned a lesser weight. Then, if the parameter that you're tracking, the current value of that parameter is within the LCL and the UCL, you're going to get all of the points of that weight that are associated with the KPI. If you're outside of the bounds, you don't get any of the points. And then, when the calculation engine is run, you're going to get a health score that's the sum of the points that are associated with the unit. And from there, we can take it up to one higher level and look at an entire plant health score.
And I would modify something you said there a little bit. The LCL and the UCL started from a statistical point of view, but then it was really important to mix in the operator knowledge, both from a buy-in perspective, but also because, some of these processes might not have been running at their ideal in the recent months that we took those standard deviations. And so the operators have a lot more knowledge and insight about how to set those values.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, and so here's what we ended up with. This is a Grafana dashboard, and we sought to kind of start with the highest level and then have the ability to drill down into lower levels to diagnose problems. So at the upper right here, you can see the current overall facility health. When this was taken, we were at an 86%. And then left of that, we have a time series of the history, the facility's health over time. Drilling down, you can see then the health of each of the unit processes. And you can see unit 3 has dipped a little bit here. Now this is a video. Let's see if I can, oh, that's not what I meant to do. Yeah. So then if we watch this video, it'll scroll down and you can start to see the individual parameters that comprise the facility health. So here we're looking at unit 2, and here you see those SPC, those control charts with the upper and lower bounds visualized. So when you're diagnosing a problem, it's pretty easy to go from the high level and drill down into the lower levels to try to pinpoint where your problems are. So now we're going to jump into a case study. We've talked a lot about what the tool is now, but I think it's really interesting how Patrick has worked with his team to use it and to try to standardize operations at their plant. And so he's going to walk through an example of this.
And so when we were putting these slides together, we had to get them into we had to get them in early so they could be incorporated into the overall presentation. So we used this example from earlier this month. Ryan, how long have we had these things up and running, or this tool?
6 months, 7 months.
Okay. We're 6 or 7 months into this thing, and for the very first time, 2 weeks ago, the San Luis Obispo Water Resource Recovery Facility hit 100%, and it was a pretty fun celebration. But it happened too late. We had already submitted the slides for the thing, and so here we are running at 89%, which 89% is pretty good. I would have been thrilled in college to get an 89%. When it comes to water quality, though, it's not good enough, and so it's showing up as yellow here because it's below optimal. And I've got alarm bells in the back of my head, and operators have alarm bells in the back of their head, thinking that's not good enough. What can we do to increase our score? And it's honestly, if we jump to this next animation, or the first animation of this slide, it's become almost like a game. And so here's one of the operators at the plant. Just calling it out in teams, and he's just like, hey, I'm trying to produce as many kilowatt hours as possible. We have a cogen unit so that my unit score goes up. And so, on the one hand, he's just operating. On the other hand, it has become a little bit of a game. And so it's pretty fun. So this overall 89, sorry, Ryan. Okay. So this overall 89% is that first level of visibility that Ryan has alluded to. And then the second level of visibility is this next animation here, where we're looking at each one of the units at the plant. And so you can see 2, 3, and 4 need some love. Unit 5 is looking pretty good. But we're gonna just for the purposes of the case study, we're gonna dive into this 82% because that's our activated sludge unit. It's the heartbeat of the plant. And so now we're jumping into this third level of visibility where we're looking at those key performance indicators. It is a little bit like that graph floating in space that we talked about at the beginning. And so it's worth mentioning that these are just time series line graphs, but you will note the upper and lower control limits that are on there. And it's helpful having this data over time displayed because we can recognize trends over the last 30 or 45 days, whatever we've set the time slicer to. But the calculation, the health score is all based on the most recent data. So it's that rightmost data point that I'm gonna look for immediately when I'm trying to diagnose why my unit is only running at 88% or 82% rather. And so I'm automatically drawn to that center chart, that nitrified effluent alkalinity. You can see that recent data point is just dipped below the LCL. And so I'm like, okay, well that's it. That's the thing that's driving my score down.
And this is a process in the center of your plant, right? And that alkalinity, that can affect pH as it flows through the plant. And I believe you guys have permits monitoring, requiring certain pH limits at the end, right?
Yep, exactly right. And so it's cool because this catches it, flags it, and draws your attention to it before we get to the disinfection unit, before we get to any regulatory compliance issues. This catches it fast, it catches it early, and it catches it clearly. And so if we get to the next animation on this one. So here's operator Tyler Lee. Again, June 6th, we're all staying on the same day. He's calling it out. He says, hey, my unit is not running at optimum health. And he's highlighted that in yellow. So, chief plant operator and chief maintenance tech and supervisor, they all see that and they say, I know that Tyler knows that his unit could do better. And he also, underneath that, he calls it out and says, I know, and here's why. Here's why I'm not running optimally. And some things we have operational control over, some things we don't. We're going to just stick with the low nitrified effluent alkalinity as because the example works when we stick with that. And so, he posts this at 8 a.m. and 2.5 hours later, here's my operational decision based on my low score to increase my sodium hydroxide pumps, which will result in a higher nitrified effluent alkalinity and ensure permit compliance at my final effluent. And so next slide. Here we are, we're on June 9th. For whatever reason, it flatlined, our nitrified effluent alkalinity flatlined for a couple of days, but you can see by June 9th, it pops back up above the lower control limit. The overall plant health gets to a nice, comfortable 93%. And we're back in the green. We're off to the races. And, like Ryan said, we've had this thing in place for 6 or 7 months. And it's been a really powerful tool for both newer operators, older operators. It's been a really fun path to walk with Ryan.
Yeah, so thanks everybody. I appreciate you listening to our presentation. We're happy to talk more about this, answer questions now, or you're also welcome to reach out to either Patrick or I at our email addresses here.
Thank you, Ryan and Patrick. A really great way to bring wastewater treatment operation into the 21st century. I mean, it's kind of like a video game or something.
That's right.
Peter, are there any questions for Ryan or Patrick?
With all the data visualization tools out there, what was the aspect of Grafana that made you select it?
Yeah, good question. I'm a big fan of Grafana. I think it's really oriented toward the IT world typically, but I think it has some nice uses in other spaces. It's just really great at doing time series visualizations. It's really fast. And so you can just zoom around your data really quickly. And it's really easy to create dashboard after dashboard. I guess as some comparison, you might look at Power BI or something like that. And I find it just a little bit slower and it's not quite as oriented toward visualizing these parameters as Grafana is.
Got it. Thank you. That's all the questions we have.
Are these algorithms hooked up to some data that just kind of is normally being taken throughout the day? How does that work?
Yeah, there's a couple different ways to hook it up. Most simply would be if you're on a local server and you can connect right into your historian or something, whatever relational database you're using for storing your data. We went through some more complex things about sending an email on a nightly basis that automatically imports the data into the system. You need a little more infrastructure to do something like that. But yeah, if you're spinning this up on a local machine, it's pretty easy to connect up to different data sources.
And I would also just mention that this was a pretty organic process. We just, every time we would come across a hurdle, we would just pretty quickly and casually find a way through it. And so we wound up with a system that works well for us, and it was a real ground up approach.
Pretty awesome way to measure the health of your systems, you know. Would you like to see other facilities start using this as well?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm definitely interested in talking to more people about this system. I'd love to hear feedback about how it could be improved. I also would be happy to help people to stand these systems up.
Okay, awesome. Well, great presentation. Thank you very much. And if anybody has questions for Ryan or Patrick, their email addresses were on their last slide. And you guys have a great day. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. This is our last presentation of the day by Farnaz Farhang from the County of San Diego on beach water quality data in the County of San Diego and the future directions. Are you there, Farnaz?
Okay, I am unmuted and I thought I had access over control.
If you don't have it, we can move the slides for you.
Sure. So I guess if we can start with the first, it seems like maybe there's a bit of a delay. But if we can start.
I'm not doing anything, so it's all you.
Oh, that's strange. This seems like it's just going on its own. What's the joy with not having a little bit of a challenge with these virtual meetings? Okay, here we go. Let's see how this works out. Hello, everyone. My name is Farnaz Farhang. I'm the environmental health specialist with the County of San Diego. Is it possible if someone can?
Yeah, just I'll run it. Don't worry about it. Just
fantastic. Thank you. I'm an environmental health specialist with the County of San Diego Beach and Bay Water Quality Monitoring Program. I will start with an overview of our program and then share a little bit more about the data we collect, how we share it with interested parties, and the future directions in which the County of San Diego is moving towards. Next slide, please. Thank you. The main objectives of our program are to collect water samples and notify public of unsafe water quality conditions. We issue advisories and closures, and we communicate that through various platforms, such as our website, sdbeachinfo.com, social media, phone hotline, and of course, working with the lifeguards to post signs to protect public health. Next slide, please. Now, there have been several laws passed that establish the basic structure for regulating beach water quality. The first one is the Beach Act of 2000, and another one is Assembly Bill 411, which basically provides funding and guidance on sampling locations. If the beach is visited by 50,000 or more visitors per year and receives surface water runoff between the months of April and October, we are mandated to sample that beach. AB 411 also provides guidance on which bacteria to test for and the lab analysis methods. Next slide, please. Now, there are 3 fecal indicated bacteria that we test for: total coliform, E. coli, and Enterococcus, and we use culture method, which provide us with results after 24 hours approximately, which is one of the main limitations of this methodology. Now, County of San Diego is in the process of implementing and using ddPCR as a new approved methodology, which will provide us with the same day results, which I will speak to in a couple of slides. Next slide, please. There are 3 main types of notifications that Beach and Bay has. The first one is advisory, where there's a bacterial exceedance and we resample once we receive those exceedances. There's a different variation of that that's also called precautionary advisory, where if there are events such as dredging or opening of an outlet of a lagoon, which might, again, result in exceedance of bacteria, we would issue that precautionary advisory. The second one is a general rain advisory, where if we have received more than 2.2 inches of rain in 24 hours, the general rain advisory is issued, which lasts 72 hours after the last major rain that has stopped. There's no routine sampling conducted during that time. And the third one is closure, where we have a confirmed sewage release either by a sewer agency that's been reported to us, Tijuana River flow, or through field investigations and sample results. And for that, we need multiple samples that are collected to confirm it's safe for the water quality is safe before the closure is lifted. Next slide, please. Now, ocean conditions are highly variable and sampling results can vary depending on collecting time, the current, wind directions, tide, surf, the river flow, such as Tijuana River flow or San Diego River, but not limited to those. Next slide, please. And Department of Environmental Health and Quality sample locations varies slightly from year to year and between summer and winter, but overall the samples that we collect are about 45 locations from the international border to the Orange County border. We also review sample results that are provided to us from 8 additional partnering agencies that we are in collaboration with, which increases the total beach locations that we get results for to 99. And all these results are posted at our website, which is listed down below, sdbeachinfo.com. But also we upload those on daily basis into the state database, which is the Beach Watch. Next slide, please. Now, a significant new development in South County monitoring, which has been as an initiative supported by the Board of Supervisors to make funding available for daily beach sampling. The South Bay shoreline is divided into 4 shorelines: the Tijuana, Imperial Beach, Silver Strand, and Coronado shoreline. And we have increased the sampling frequency from what it used to be twice a week to now 6 times a week. We also receive results from our City of San Diego, our partnering agency, for one of those days. So this provides us with a 7-day-a-week results for the South Bay area. And this provides us with the earliest sampling data to notify public if there is any beach impact, any exceedances, and it will also assist us in determining if the water quality improves and signs can be lifted and advisories and closures can be lifted as well. Next slide, please. Another significant improvement for the beach monitoring program is the development and the use of the molecular method, which I mentioned earlier, ddPCR, droplet digital polymerase chain reaction, to detect bacteria faster and receive same-day results versus the current culture method, which takes about 24 hours to receive those results. This is the first study in the nation. EPA approved it in May of this year, and we're hoping to be able to fully implement it in fall of this year. And with implementation of the ddPCR, we would no longer sample for TC and E. coli as a surrogate for fecal coliform, and we would only sample for Enterococcus. Next slide, please. Just wanted to share the platforms again that we use to communicate our results with public and any other interested parties and agencies. Our website again, which is the simplified version of the results provided to public, the social media, our telephone hotline, and next slide, please. And also, again, the state database, the Beach Watch, as I mentioned, where we upload the results from all the samples that we have received from us and our partnering agencies on a daily basis. And these results are, with the link provided, is available to everybody and is able to be retrieved and used. And the last slide is the next slide, which has my contact information if there is any further questions, especially with the DDPCR. And that concludes the presentation. And thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thank you so much, Farnaz. Are there any questions, Peter?
There are no questions at this time, Tony.
Okay, great. So Farnaz, when bacteria exceeds limits, are the beaches always, are warnings always posted?
As soon as we receive results from the lab and we notice that there is exceedance, we contact lifeguards, we update the website, and we send an email to our partnering agencies. We send a message to our social media in order to reach a broader and a different age group, of course. And yes, and the lifeguards, of course, post the whatever sign is appropriate right away.
Lots of coordination going on there.
There is a lot of yes.
Glad to hear that. I was recently at a beach that was posted, and I didn't see the posting until after we left the beach. Not in your area, somewhere else.
Well, that's great to hear. Okay, because we tried to stay on top of it.
But you had a lot of green spots there, so that's good. Looks like things are pretty healthy down there.
We have a question before you go. It looks like closures are linked to known sewage overflow events. Can the beaches be closed based on the data alone?
Not necessarily. So what's challenging with the South Bay, as I mentioned, it not only depends on the sample results that we receive, because again, currently we're using culture methods. So we would be receiving the results from yesterday. So if our staff, they do the daily investigations of the conditions, if there's any odor or discoloration detected. We're also in very close relationship and on daily contact with our lifeguards down there who are very familiar with their beach. So if there's any detection of any impact, either from the Tijuana River or even from a wastewater treatment facility that is about 15 kilometers south of the border, Punta Bandera, if there are impacts that they notice, they notify us, and based on various other conditions, wind, flow, swell, etc., tides, we might issue the closure even earlier. And in the past and historically, and looking at our data, luckily we have been making the correct calls, and we have closed the beach or have issued a precautionary advisory if need be to make sure that the public is safe.
Thank you very much, Farnaz.
Thank you.